and now she's going. So,
Excellent. Were you aware of something?
Yes,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering now if it would be a good idea for me to have a microphone just for that purpose?
Well-
Yes. Okay,
and
or I am loud.
well, we don't have a mic that'll tie to that camera. So what we would like for you to do, well, it would pick up the noise, yes, if you have a mic. Welcome, come on in, we're just getting started, so, well, no, don't you want to be right in the camera, too? Yeah. So,
Okay.
you guys all are at the Substance Free Coalition meeting. Next month, we have sex trafficking, that's right, presented by the Child Advocacy Center, right?
Wake Park investigator.
Oh, the Wake Park,
Yeah.
oh, who's married to the Child Advocacy Center. Yeah. So that'll be next month. And why don't we just do quick introductions, because I think there are a lot of good connections here, so go ahead.
I was actually torn on who I was gonna be today, but my name is Megan Baum, and I am the mother of a 5th grader and a 2nd grader, here at the South Middle School. But I also work in population health within Central Care on tobacco treatment.
Oh, okay, great, thanks for coming.
And I'm Jody Gerken, also wearing multiple hats today. I'm the mother of a freshman who goes to school here, but I work for Central Care and do policy prevention.
Super.
Ellen Wilford, teaching health and biology here at the middle school. Laura Arndt, principal here at the middle school.
I'm Jill Lundquist, I'm the school resource officer here at the middle school.
Rob Lyons, school resource officer at the high school.
Lisa Kramer, school board member.
Jenny Wald, I have 3 kids in elementary, and I work for Students County Public Health.
You have 3 in our elementary? I didn't know that. When you presented the last time, I didn't realize.
My youngest is in kindergarten, so he just started.
Oh, okay, sorry, I should have known that.
Danny Krasinski, I also work with Students County Public Health with tobacco prevention.
And do you have any kids in our school
I
district?
know kids.
Okay, all right, just double
Those are
checking.
really cute dogs.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Sash Hanson, assistant principal at the SAR School.
Brenda Steve, principal at the high school.
Kim Hunt.
And I have 2 kids in the district and I'm a social worker at Stearns County.
Super.
Awesome.
Nick Peterson, the other assistant principal from the high school.
And with that, I'm privileged tonight to introduce Summer Hagy, who is with the American Heart Association. I think I said she was with the American Lung Association.
My
Totally fine.
Okay, so it still works,
It works.
and so
Heart, lungs.
it's all yours.
Excellent. I want to make very clear that I'm one of probably the least qualified people in the room to be talking about vaping right now with all of you in here. So I want this to be more of a conversation. So please, as we're going through things, feel free to let me know what you're seeing in your buildings, what you're hearing from your students. That's really important feedback for us at the American Heart Association. So as we are out talking to other groups who maybe have no idea what a vape even is, that's really good information that we can share. I'm really excited to be here. Typically when I'm presenting to groups, it's kindergarten through 4th grade. So this is really nice to talk to adults. I'm just really gonna give sort of a brief overview of our stance at the American Heart Association on e-cigs, vaping, heart health, all of those types of things. Cover real quickly the new and upcoming types of vapes. Some of you maybe have not had a chance to hold them or see them or look at them. We have a great video from one of our advocacy staff in this presentation. And then also talk about what we're doing at the Heart Association to help try to combat this epidemic that's really happening all over the place. Just for the people who work here in the district, how often are you dealing with vaping e-cig usage? Daily, weekly, multiple times a day?
I would say weekly for sure.
Okay.
At least the reports are there.
Sure. And are you seeing it on all grades, middle school and high school? Okay. I had a middle school principal say to me, not in this district, a couple of weeks ago that vaping isn't a problem there, and I was like, I bet you just don't see it. Awesome. So just kind of a quick background. The good news is that cigarette smoking has decreased pretty substantially over the last few years. In '97, like that was the height of the Joe Camel area. If any of you remember those Marlboro Man, Joe Camel, we were looking about 1 in 4 teens were smoking cigarettes. So the good news is that that has decreased because in 2018 we're seeing about 1 in 20 teens that are actually smoking cigarettes. As most of us in the room know, unfortunately, the bad news is that vaping has really picked up. So when I present to middle schools, I usually tell them this. What happened was vapes and e-cigs were originally released to help people who'd been smoking for 20, 30, 40 years, help them step down their nicotine level and quit nicotine and tobacco altogether. What happened was so many people stopped smoking that the tobacco industry realized, holy cow, we're losing a lot of money. We need to do something to get this back. And so they started targeting youth. And so they are called replacement smokers. And when I say that to middle school students, you can see some of the light bulbs start to go off, and I talk to them about social media advertising, and we'll talk about that here too. So you can see when Juul was introduced there, mid-2016, the rates just increased like substantially. And these, as we were talking before, most of these statistics are old. You said there's new stats coming out Thursday. So I would expect these numbers will be bigger. Probably the most alarming thing, I think, is that these are all self-reported numbers. And so if you think about it, there's always going to be that segment of students who are going to say, no, I don't vape, I don't smoke, I don't do anything, because they don't want to get in trouble, right? So I suspect that the numbers are even a little bit higher than this right now. So between 2017 and 2018, we saw the usage really skyrocket. So 78% of high school students self-reported using, and 48% of middle school students. So, and again, I think those are probably a little low. Those of you who are working in the district, does that seem about right? Or if you've had experiences outside of this district, does that seem about average? Yeah. So e-cigarettes are the most used tobacco product by youth, and we'll talk more about that in a second. And kids are really using e-cigarettes more frequently than anything else. You'll see what we've heard from principals is that kids are vaping all day long. So they're not just skipping into the bathroom to vape quickly in between class. It's happening all day long. And as we'll talk about in just a minute, one pod for a Juul contains as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes. So kids are going through multiple packs of cigarettes a day, multiple hits of nicotine a day, and that's what's really addicting them. Right there. I should have skipped ahead before I said that. So that's where we're seeing this huge level of addiction, because nicotine is one of the most addictive substances. This is a great slide for, and I will send this PowerPoint to you and you can send it out if anybody wants to use it. This is great. This is a great slide for parents. And then I also have a video that's coming up next that you can send to families, because a lot of parents and even a lot of teachers, I talked to an elementary school group, not here in this district, a few weeks ago, and one of the teachers didn't know what I meant when I was talking about Juul. So I know that we still have a lot of work left to do. And the hard part about it is that tobacco companies are smart and they're sneaky, and they're making these look like actual devices. It looks like a makeup pen, it looks like a whiteout, it looks like a highlighter. There's sweatshirts you can buy, there's backpacks you can buy. They're really smart and sneaky about getting this into your youth's hands. And here is that video.
Here to talk about that and what parents need to know is Jess Nolan. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I have no idea how common this is becoming, but it is really increasing vaping among teens.
Yes, since 2018, the vaping numbers have doubled. In high school, 1 in 5 kids are vaping, and even in middle schoolers, it's 1 in 20.
You know, there was such a good effort to try and get kids to stop smoking. Are you sensing that kids maybe don't think vaping is as dangerous as regular cigarette smoking?
Yes, a lot of kids don't think it has any nicotine in it, and it's just water, and they're just vapors. So what I'm here to talk about today is what parents can look for in their kids' backpacks, and even teachers can look for it in the classroom. So what comes to mind when you think of tobacco is the traditional cigarettes or even the smokeless tobacco, but these containers are being made to look like everyday items.
Sure.
So it's tricking parents from seeing what they're looking for. So we have smokeless tobacco, which resembles mints. Moving on to cigarillos, the foil packaging resembles a fruit roll-up or a fruit snack. And then going into the newer products that are coming out on the market, this one that looks like a flash drive.
Wait, that's tobacco?
Yeah, so we have one pod here, and this contains as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes. And
Wow.
kids are going through multiple of these a day, and how they charge them is through a USB drive, so they can charge it in their computer while they're in school.
Unbelievable. And so that's easy to get by teachers too in class.
Yep, and you can hold it in the palm of your hand. And then some vape pens they resemble a pen or even some eyeliner. So it could be in your makeup jar.
So this is something you buy. This isn't something someone made.
That's the eyeliner.
That's
but
the
yeah,
eyeliner,
you
yeah.
buy the vape pens. Yep. And then this last device over here, it looks like whiteout or even some highlighters are in the teardrop shape. And then what they're coming out with now is some apparel that you can vape from. So this is a hoodie. You hook up the device to the drawstring of the hoodie and you vape out of the drawstring.
That is unbelievable. So these sort of devices that make it easier, and they, something like this actually looks sort of maybe fun to teens. Are these purely targeted at teenagers?
Absolutely, yep, and especially the flavors. That's what the teens are going for, because then they don't have just the straight up tobacco taste.
So we only have a little time left, but what can parents tell their kids about stuff like this that looks like it is 100% targeted at them?
Talk to your kids about how dangerous the effects are, be on the lookout for it, and just let them know that you're on their side, and if they are smoking, help them.
All right, thank you. It's something a lot of parents are paying attention to right now. Thanks for being here with us,
thank
Jess. I appreciate it.
My favorite part of that is when she picks up the eyeliner, because she can't even tell the difference. And I talked to Jess just the other day, and I said, did she know? And she's like, yeah, I went through and showed her what each individual one was, but once it was all out on the table, she had no idea. And I think that's the biggest thing for families to understand, is that it looks very similar to everyday things you would find in your kid's backpack, right? Like fruit roll-up wrappers, or candy wrappers, or a mint container. So just for parents to really have an extra special eye out. So this is where the tobacco company is really doubling down on their efforts to entice kids to use their products. So the rise of Juul, it's the most popular e-cigarette on the market, and Juul was the one where she clipped the pod into it to charge it. It looks like a flash drive. It's in a variety of colors, as you can see here. It has a smaller aerosol cloud, and then the nicotine provides an increased rate, the salt provides an increased rate of nicotine in the cartridge, which we just talked about. And you can find these anywhere. You walk into, although I did just see that I think Walgreens is pulling them, which is great. And CVS, I believe, has already pulled. Kroger, I think, is another one that's pulling. But these are very easy to find.
Our local convenience store has them right at the
Yes.
checkout line.
And there's a new smoke shop I've noticed in South Rapids with a big flashing light, like all the time. One thing I was gonna say was, we are actively attempting, and you're a big part of that, to move the age of purchase of these types of products from 18 to 21. So the purchase age of tobacco would actually increase from 18 to 21. And the big reason for that is because when you're in high school, your odds of running around with another 18-year-old are pretty logical. Like most of my son was 18 pretty much the whole time he was a senior. And so the odds of that peer-to-peer sharing and purchasing and giving is a lot higher. If we age that to 21, typically the odds of you running around with a 21-year-old when you're in high school are a little bit lower. So we're hoping that peer-to-peer sharing goes away or reduces. These are actual ads that Juul has used. I've talked to middle schools here in Sartell, and I've said, raise your hand if you're on any type of social media, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram. Of course, every single hand in the room goes up. And then I say, okay, now keep your hands raised if you've ever seen any type of an advertisement at all for any sort of e-cig or vaping product. And literally every hand in the room stays up. And so then what I tell them is, I have every single one of those platforms as well, and I've never ever seen an advertisement for an e-cig or a vape, because I have way aged out of what they're going after. And so it's just those little conversations with kids to help them understand that the tobacco company is targeting them, because that's their next generation of smoker. And so for families too, to be aware, it's hard, obviously, to keep track of what your kids are looking at online, but just to know what some of these devices look like. You can see, I think, maybe I don't. There is an ad, there was a Snapchat or an Instagram photo of the cast of Game of Thrones, and one of them has a vape in her hand in between takes. And so they're seeing all these people that they see on TV right on their Instagram profiles. This is the thing that probably makes me the most upset is the flavor and the packaging. So you can see the e-liquid, which is what they would use in a vape or an e-cig, is the red squares, and then it's made to look like the fruit product that's labeled in the black squares. So if you were dumping out your kid's football bag, or if you were going through your kid's backpack at the end of a busy week, you're probably not paying that much attention. You're just throwing the stuff away thinking it's nothing. And that's the whole point. It's made to sneak past adults so kids can be using these items. And these are just a few. I mean, you saw more in the video, but it's amazing to me. I mean, there was an e-liquid, full disclosure, there was an e-liquid container in my basement a few months ago, and I was like, I know what this is. Who is in our house? What's going on? Whose is this? And then the social media influence. This is the one I was talking about. So she's vaping in between takes of Game of Thrones. And so this is what kids are seeing all the time. And nearly half of Jules' followers on Twitter are youth because they're targeting to them. And you can see the tweets just from everyday population. You can see the tweets, people talking about Jewel. And probably a lot of those are heart association related tweets now, because we tweet to Jewel a lot. Health effects. And these are things that we get the most sort of pushback from, especially from middle school students. I usually have one really brave 8th grade boy who's going to go to battle with me when I talk to middle schools. And I always say, we can talk more about this after class. But we don't actually know all of the long-term effects of vaping. There hasn't been enough time. We haven't done enough research. And quite frankly, we don't have the dollars to fund this type of research for, up until the last probably 40 years, most of our research was based on just heart health, and now we've had to really shift some of those dollars to this tobacco research. So we've seen and heard a lot of these things, right? This acute lung disease, and those numbers are changing daily. We don't even put numbers in this anymore because by the time we present it, the numbers have gone up so much. Very basic mouth and throat irritation, obviously nausea, headache, dry cough. And these are some things too for families to be watching out for. If they have a child who seems sicker than normal, if they have a child who's got a sore throat a lot, and that's not normal. One thing I saw from Dr. Jen Ashton on Good Morning America was if your child is leaving like the dinner table pretty frequently to go to the bathroom, or if they don't want to take long car rides anymore, or if they're going to be somewhere where they're not going to have access to their vape for a long time, you'll see that they'll start to say, no, I don't want to do that, or oh, I'm going to ride with friends, or oh, I don't feel well, I'm going to stay home. Some of those are really key indicators that your student may be vaping. Or they may just be getting older and don't want to hang out with you anymore. Happens too. So this is really what we're trying to get across to especially parents and especially students is it's not risk-free. These have not been reviewed by the FDA. A lot of those flavorings have been approved for taste, but they haven't been approved for ingestion. So there's no research, there's no studies behind these flavorings. They typically contain nicotine. That's one of the highly addictive drugs that we known. And there's very little consistency across, from Juul to Blue to all of the other types of e-cigs. There's very little consistency there. And then obviously, as we know, it's been associated with these lung disease outbreaks. There's been some deaths related to this. Yes, typically when people are dying, it's because they're using illicit drugs in their vape. But I was just speaking with a middle school principal in the metro, who said, we have this big increase in vaping, and then they moved into the THC, and then they moved into mushrooms, and now we have a heroin problem again at our high school. And so it's just one right after another. And this just came up yesterday. I was scrolling through Twitter and saw this, that we're finally starting to get some studies back that this secondhand vaping is affecting mice in laboratories. There are some drawbacks and some setbacks to these studies, but these are very clear indicators of what we already knew and what we were kind of already trying to educate people about, is that these aren't safe alternatives to anything. So the Heart Association has been fighting big tobacco pretty much ever since big tobacco has been on the radar, so way back into the 60s. I won't read this entire thing to you, but we do have a long history of fighting for smoke-free workplaces, smoke-free communities, raising those tobacco purchase limits. You know, when someone smokes, whether it's cigarettes or cigars or they use smokeless tobacco or any of those things, there's so many health problems that come with that. It becomes a public health emergency, and the Heart Association has been there to help do as much as we can to advocate for new laws, new policies. So again, like I've already talked about, restricting the purchase age to 21, trying to prevent youth access, including e-cigarettes and smoke-free laws. I know a lot of people have smoke-free workplaces or they have a tobacco policy, but typically if they go back and look at it, it hasn't been touched for 5 or 10 years, and it probably doesn't include e-cigs and vaping. We saw that kind of happen a few years ago where you go into somewhere and it would be like no smoking, including electronic cigarettes. So that's where we really want to get every organization to be and every business to be. Removing that flavored tobacco is a really key thing. 81% of students who begin using tobacco self-report that they've started with a flavor. So if we can get those flavors off the market, we can hopefully decrease the number of youth who are starting smoking. And then really encouraging that FDA regulation. Our CEO at the American Heart Association is very clear with the FDA that they're not doing enough and they're not doing it fast enough. And she is like a dog on a bone. She is not letting that go. If you are interested in learning more about our advocacy work, not only with e-cigs, but with all types of other health policy issues, you can join our You're the Cure network. I joined the network. I think I get maybe a text a month, if that. You can also sign up via email. So if you're interested, you just text MNT21 to 46839. And I'm going to send this PowerPoint out in a PDF as well in case parents want to be involved in this. And we're really working, we're doing this all-in approach at the American Heart Association, right? So we're working in communities, we're working in organizations, we're working in businesses. One of those ways is schools, and that's where I spend the majority of my time working with students and schools on our Kids Heart Challenge and American Heart Challenge program. Some of you may remember them as Jump Rope for Heart or Hoops for Heart. All we've done is change the name. And we've added some additional resources to that. So one way schools can become involved is to join us and to have us come in and talk to the kids about Kids Heart Challenge. We even talk to elementary school students about no smoking, no vaping. We start to introduce those messages early. We have a character that's a specific no smoking, no vaping character, because we want to educate them early and often so that when they get to middle school and they're maybe approached from an 8th grader or a 9th grader on the bus that says, hey, you should try this, they have enough knowledge to say, nope, no thank you, I don't want that, not for me. So that's what we're really hoping to do. With our American Heart Challenge, we work with middle school and high school students on a lot of those same things. We talk to them about the importance of heart health. We talk to them about good diet, good exercise. We talk to them a lot about choosing water instead of sugary beverages. That's a big one for our older students. And then we also talk to them about giving back and doing something bigger than themselves. And maybe they raise $5 to the American Heart Association. That's awesome. I always say if every kid in America raised $5, they'd probably be out of a job because we'd be well on our way to solving all of the problems. And so how you can help and how families can help is really just to have an open dialogue with their students. You have to ask the question, but you have to be prepared for the answer. And if something is going on, and I'll pose this to the administrators in the group, if parents know that something is going on, guidance counselors at the school would be a good resource. And then I think also pediatricians or doctors are a good resource. So if you have questions or if your team comes to you or your youth comes to you and says, I'm vaping and I can't stop, probably 2 good places to start would be your pediatrician and your school guidance counselor. When I talk to middle school students, I always say, if this is you and you're having a problem with vaping, go talk to someone, talk to an adult. You're not going to get thrown in vaping jail. We want to help you get away from this habit. And like I said, joining the Year the Cure Network. If you know of a school who you think would be interested in participating in one of our in-school programs, let me know. Even if it's not here in this area, we're all over the state of Minnesota. Fortunately, Sartell does a really nice job. The middle school participates, and then the elementary schools participate opposite years of each other. So this year, Oak Ridge will be participating in our program. And then things you're already doing, host community dialogue, send information out to families. Our most requested resource right now from district offices, from superintendents, is anything on vaping that I can send home to my family so they are educated. And then on our website, there is tons of information. So if you just go to heart.org and you just search vaping, you'll find all kinds of information. And there's even a video on there that helps parents learn how to talk to their kids about vaping. So all kinds of great resources just on our website. And I actually did this today as a little, I can't think of the word I want to use, as a experiment. There it is. Let me get my phone. So I texted Ditch Jewel to 88709. So this is the Truth Initiative quit plan, essentially, is what it is. So I just texted, and right away I got responses, like a second later. Reply with your name and age. For example, Joey, 17. So I just kind of went through. I said I was Savannah, and I was 16 years old. And it just said, if you're ready to quit, tell me the date that you want to quit. And if you don't know, just write back IDK. So I wrote back IDK, I don't know. And then they just go through. Let's do 2 weeks. Let's give it a shot. Why do you want to quit? And then you just keep going through the conversation. And then once a week, they'll send you helpful messages to get you going in your quit process of quitting e-cigs and vaping. So it's a start. And we just hired a former staffer from the Truth Initiative to come on board to the Heart Association. And he has some really great insight on things that are happening and some potential partnerships with the Truth Initiative and the Heart Association. My contact information is there. I also have cards over there on the table. I would like to hear from you if you have other questions or comments, things you're seeing, things we could be doing as a Heart Association, resources you might need. I'll open it up.
Could I ask a couple of pointed questions?
Okay, you mentioned Central Care is doing something. What are you doing right now?
Well, we're kind of multifaceted, and I'm sorry, I came as a mom.
You're okay, that's fine.
How are you? We, through our initiative, Feeling Good Minnesota, we do a lot of policy and advocacy work, so we will be working at the legislature this summer, working with Representative O'Driscoll, Senator Howe, on passing Tobacco 21. It did pass the House last year, but it didn't get a hearing in the Senate, so we'll be really pushing hard for that. As you may know, and I hope you're not licking your wounds anymore, we did have a St. Cloud initiative that did pass T21, and then our mayor unfortunately vetoed that moments later. So we're very involved in the advocacy and how we can work collectively to prevent these problems way upstream from ever happening. But should they already have addiction, Megan works with the Tobacco Cessation Specialist and does a lot of that.
So as Jody works out in the community, my job is more internal within the health system. So I work to centralize our tobacco treatment services. And so in reference to who would you talk to, we actually have certified tobacco treatment specialists that have specialty trained in nicotine addiction. We have them in all of our clinics, and they are available to see patients of any age. They can get a referral to a tobacco treatment specialist from their provider, or they can be self-referred. And by calling the centralized number, which is 320-200-3200, they just ask to have a tobacco treatment specialist appointment, and they'll get sent to a scheduler that can get them on any of the specialist schedules. So within that, we're also having conversations about how we can work in partnership with our counties, and so I can kind of pass that back to public health because we've been having some conversations. We do have an incident command to address some of these issues. It is in our communities. We are working with the Minnesota Department of Health to report any suspected cases to be turned in for investigation. So that has happened within the Central Care Health System. It is a choice of whether you participate. As of right now, there's, Washington DC and New Hampshire are the only states that do not have reported data of incidences, and I don't know if that's because they've chosen to not report as a state, or if it's because they do not have any cases, because it is not required to report these cases to your health department to be investigated by the CDC and the health department. And so part of the work that we've been doing is trying to get just the message out to patients that if you present with any of the conditions, which is stomach, one of the other pieces from health related that has been seen nationwide within youth is actually seizures, and that's due to nicotine overdose. That wasn't messaged in the presentation. So with the respiratory issues, we're seeing an early onset on stomach issues that then go into the respiratory and then shortness of breath. And so if anybody's presenting to the emergency room to their primary care, most of the cases have been seen in primary care before going to the emergency department. We ask that they do disclose the vaping and trying to get the word out to the community to let the providers know. As Summer mentioned, that fear of being in trouble is potentially the case, but we can't provide patients with the best care if we don't have all the information. So a lot of our messaging to the community, we have posters on our doors that if you are using e-cigarettes or vaping, to please let them know. The other piece is we're also doing a lot of internal staff education. Kids don't call it vaping. Kids call it juuling. Kids don't recognize an e-cigarette. They know what a vape is. They know what a Soren is, but they know the more modern day. So just having those education pieces with our staff to let them know how to talk to the kids and how to ask that information in a way that they can resonate and understand what they're being asked.
I will say, as now in my mom hat, my daughter was a graduate last year from Sartell, and she's up in Bemidji State, actually pursuing a degree in education. And unbeknownst to her, her roommate vaped when they moved in together. And as we moved in, they were going through, like, we're an e-cigarette, tobacco-free campus, and my daughter's like, you can save your breath. I'm not going to vape. My mom would disown me. But nevertheless, we went through the spiel. But she said to me, she said, did you know Mom, Sydney vapes? I'm like, well, try to help her, blah, 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 whatever. She came back to me, and this is how policy works. She said, Mom, Sydney's not vaping anymore because Bemidji's a tobacco 21 community, and none of them can buy tobacco or can buy their vape or their liquid. I'm like, that's fantastic, because that's what we want to see statewide, is that, because they're even at 18 didn't feel comfortable asking an upperclassman. So yes, imagine how an 8th grader would feel trying to ask somebody who's 21.
Exactly. That's the goal.
Right.
So, do we ever try that in the city of Sartell?
No, but if you'd like to, we have these.
Benton County.
Yeah, Benton County passed, so it's all about different licensing, and in the county, Benton County, they license about 12 to 15 tobacco retailers. So it doesn't include the city of Sartell or like the city of Foley, for example. Wright County just recently passed, but it didn't include the city of Annandale, Howard Lake, or Buffalo, but they want to emulate what Wright County did. I can't speak for what Stearns County is currently working on, but we would work with local municipalities that wanted to do that.
I think it's a little bit of a challenge when you talk about policy. So if the policy is working to include every single city or only the tobacco retailers of the county license, then typically only rural areas would be more affected. And so it's kind of like educating, do you use a public health authority where it's covered across county, because you want to make it equal, right? So some of that rural areas where use is higher. So we're working on right now, but so that policy piece is a lot of work, but worth it. So, mom hat, city of Sartell resident, not employee. I did have multiple conversations with our previous city council. We have had some changeover with this last election. It didn't really look like a win with the previous council. I have not approached the most recent council. So,
and I think then too, we didn't know what we didn't know.
Right.
And I think now it's such a heightened epidemic that it could be much more palatable than it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I I actually had the opportunity because the fourth grade at Oak Ridge was talking about lung health last year. And of course, my little one was like, guess what my mom does for a living? And so I had the opportunity to go in and talk to 3 different fourth grade classes on vaping. That was like the year to get them before they ended up here, because I have had conversations with my fifth grade now, and she has seen it in the middle school.
I think our grade configuration change will help a little bit in that fifth graders will be more like third and fourth, rather than being more like seventh and eighth.
Right.
So, that's one thing I see positive about that, one of the many, but, what else is happening at the county level?
So we do a couple of things. We do a lot of trainings per se, as Summer talked about, getting the word out, specifically to parents and specifically to staff.
And community.
Yeah, so we're working with almost all the schools across Stearns County, doing community presentations for the community and parents. A lot of parents bring their child to these presentations for kind of that dialogue piece. But then we also do trainings that are a little bit more tailored to staff, where we bring in devices so they can look, touch, feel, and identify what they should be looking for, instead of addressing the student and saying, oh, I got a draw, I don't know, I'm just gonna look and say. I mean, because it is hard to have that confrontation, especially when you feel uneducated about that. We've been doing a lot of education, health promotion, talking with cities about policy work, working on our own policy work from the county standpoint, educating individuals within the county, so kind of multifaceted to what Julie's doing.
Resources to schools.
Yeah.
They're big interesting device.
Yeah. Access to handouts and posters and stuff, signs that we can do schools as well, so.
And then to technical assistance, so a lot of schools, every school across Stearns County have updated their policies to incorporate language around e-cigarettes, but again, it's kind of how specific is it, right? We want to make sure that there are no gray areas, and then developing parks as well, proximity to schools, couponing, flavoring, things like that, so kind of on and on.
Are you familiar with any schools that have vape detectors in their bathrooms?
I can say Howard Lake does, because when we were at the Wright County public hearing for their countywide ordinance, there was a police liaison officer from Howard Lake, and he said that morning, and this was a 1 p.m. hearing, he said we've already had 16, the detector's gone up 16 times today.
Annandale also has it. It was just with their superintendent last week. In all of their restaurants? I believe, especially in the high school, yes.
So,
Sorry.
what do they do? Tell me how
I
they.
don't, but I can find out.
Okay,
Or I can get you their contact info. It's just Tim Crum is the superintendent at Annandale, and he would be able to tell you.
I contacted the Fly Sense, one of the brands. It is godly outrageous. They have a program fee, and we're talking hundreds of, close to $1,000 per detector, plus every year upgrade or
Yeah.
a fee for their user device.
Sure. So the one that Annandale has, it will like send a text message, yes. So that was probably similar.
So I don't know.
And they're small, so they may only have 1, 2.
Yep, a lot of times you can buy dummy ones. They look like vape detectors, you move it around. So,
I presented at the hospital today on cigarettes, ironically enough. And one of the participants said that their district had received a grant. And so I don't know, are you aware of some grant opportunities?
well, there's, sorry, I didn't know who she was pointing at. Go ahead. you go first.
We've had a couple of requests. We typically see grants kind of come down the pipeline further and further, and so we try to just push them out as they come. We haven't seen any right now for this new cycle coming up, but also to just inquiries to help write grants. That's also a part of our work in public health, to make sure that there's specified language to talk about. Here's why they're necessary, because this is what we're seeing. So just defining needs and things like that. Yeah, we can just specifically do training too.
last year applied for the SHIP grant, and at that time they said it was too new of technology to really give us cash for it. But
You can always keep asking them
Oh, we
what
will.
to say.
And with our Kids Heart Challenge and American Heart Challenge, so elementary, middle school, schools that participate do have an opportunity to apply for grants. And so I will check on that and see if, for example, something around vaping, education, or detection would be part of the included options. It's grants up to $3,500, so it would definitely help.
Do you know if you get cheaper detectors with both of your organization? Or do you guys get wholesale or discount?
You know, I don't think anyone's ever approached us about that. I will check. I'll check in with our
I wonder if
advocacy
that
team.
would be a procurement question for like the local school districts. If you would-
Yeah,
Do it all
Lily and
together.
everybody.
yep.
I have no clue of even what they look like, how they operate. I am so clueless on it, so we gotta find out more, yes.
They're just, the ones that I've seen are just little white boxes that kind of stick up to the ceiling, and you wouldn't really know what it looks like an air freshener, are the ones I've seen.
I have information from FlySense, email it to me, I can email it to you tomorrow if you want, but they are expensive.
Okay, at least to get a baseline of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
One thing too, we were talking about this before the presentation, I have a friend that is a dean of students in a school around here, and she asked if we had been seeing, more information in schools about the Zen pods. So basically, they're advertised as tobacco free, right? They're not nicotine free, but they're advertised as tobacco free. So if the education isn't there, individuals would say, oh, great, tobacco free. And they're actually spitless, and they're white, they look like chewing gum. And so they come in a variety of flavors, and so they're seeing students use those during the day to get a nicotine hit, so they don't have to go to the bathroom as frequently. So now it's kind of a dual use situation. And they look just like mints, as you guys saw in the video. Very, very similar to that. They look exactly like straight. They come in coffee, citrus, pumpkin, bubblegum.
The tobacco industry is smart and sneaky. I mean, they'll just keep
It just
pumping out
seems
new
so
products.
illegal that they can do that.
Yeah, and the tins are only about
Yep.
$3.95, I think. They're very cheap,
Yeah.
so.
Do you have to keep them behind the counter at a convenience store?
Yes, we can have nicotine in them.
They still need
But-
somebody to get them.
But the difference too with some of those things is you can buy a direct sale. You can go online, you can apply for a subscription, right? There is a secondary registration now since, things have been, have come down on distributors, but again, you just put your parents' information or something like that, you can continuously log in and get them directly mailed to your house and, no one would really know. And that's the same thing for Jewel, they have the subscription boxes where you can also get interchangeable pod pieces with the salts and oils. So try new flavors and things like that. So that's also kind of a challenge. And there's thousands of devices that exist. I think there's over 50,000 flavoring mixtures that exist. So it's very, very challenging to track.
Most kids think there's no nicotine. That's exactly what you ask them, they say it was just water, what's the problem?
It's just water vapor. That's always
Just
that one
water
brave
vapor,
eighth grade boy. It's gonna stand up during health class and tell me that I'm wrong. It's just water vapor.
I always ask them, what happens when you inhale water in a swimming pool? You choke because your lungs don't like water. So it's not just water, but even if you believe it's just water, think about it.
And I think it was you that said during our meeting, our teaching and learning meeting, there's the metals that are being heated up in these.
Yes, they're reaching
So it's
heavy
not
metals.
just, it's not just water.
It's not, but you gotta meet them where they're at.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
I would say very similar to, kind of incident command, right, where cases are reported. We get cases in public health from, lead exposure, right? So if you can imagine, we're seeing higher amounts of lead exposure from the public health perspective, and they are between the ages of 15 and 17. So again, there's kind of a little bit of correlation there. We're still looking at the data, of course, but, there's confounding factors, so we do look at that.
Thank you.
I would say, I think too, you had mentioned, with new data coming out, so Thursday, the Minnesota Department of Health, they're actually releasing the review of the Minnesota Student Survey data, so that is one thing to always kind of look at, we do anticipate use obviously going up.
Did you see the governor's announcement last Friday, Thursday? The press conference with NDH and NDE?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a really powerful piece too, where they're looking at flavoring and online sales and what are our policy agendas gonna be to try to combat this in the front end? So,
Yeah, it's some of the tobacco data or e-cigarettes was released at that time as well. So I actually drafted an email to the districts because I get newsletters every single week from every single school secretary. And there's not been anything in there on e-cigarettes or anything like that. So I mean, we heard what you're hearing, what we're hearing, and we're seeing, so I'm interested in what education that you guys are providing to the families, because I actually kind of drafted something, and I don't know if you'd send it out or how that would work, but from your entity, you have pretty direct access to our community families through their children, and you do a really great job at communicating in a whole bunch of different platforms, which as a mom that tries to keep up with everything, I appreciate, because if I miss it somewhere, I can see it somewhere else. I'd like to hear a little bit about, the platform of your role in this as well, besides hosting things like this.
I'd love you to send me that email that you were starting to
I was
do.
gonna say, I think that's part of what we're trying to do too, is we've been getting contacted from other district superintendents saying, I'm getting phone calls every day, why aren't you telling us about vaping? So it's not, it's all over the place. So that's part of what we're doing too, is compiling information, very easy infographics that you can send out as an attachment to those awesome emails. That parents can open it up, they can see things, we can send out that video clip, we can include things in your email.
I think
Yeah,
one of
we're all in
the
it
things
together.
that's very important is just what we did here tonight.
Yeah.
Not for the rest, but I had no idea that every one of the different groups here is doing all of the things that are going on.
Yep.
I knew Centric Care was doing something because my wife works at Centric Care, but I didn't know exactly what it was. I knew the Stearns County Public Health was doing things. We have talked about what we're doing, but how to get that more of an organized, so that kind of message that's kind of puts it all together. I kind of forget about St. Cloud and what's happening with them in terms of, I forgot that Heracles did not sign that. I remember.
Did you forget that?
um,
We're still in therapy. It's stab in my heart. I see his pocket constitution on a nightly basis.
I will also tell you, I probably won't send out anything controversial until after November 5th. But this really isn't controversial. This is about what our kids are getting. So.
The Stearns County folks were here last year and presented on vaping as well. So they shared with us their presentation, so that we emailed that presentation out to all of our high school families. And we'll do the same with this one as well. Because there's some resources in here, like what was it called? Truth Initiative? I think parents often wonder, how do I help my child stop vaping?
And I think if more parents specifically knew how the tobacco industry is marketing to their child, it would be appalling. But again, kind of, when you say we don't know, we don't know. But I think we've just even recently done a really good job of identifying between Stearns County and Centric Care who's on first and what are you guys doing, so we're not being duplicative in services, and if you've got that, we'll get this, so that we can really take a much more strategic approach to how we're gonna combat this.
And you can do stuff that we can't do.
Right, we can lobby, for what it's worth. Yeah.
I think it's important to let people and families know about the tobacco specialists.
Yes.
Because a lot of people are kind of stuck, what do we do, where do we go,
Yeah.
who can we talk to?
And that's when we just talked about it too, it's like, can you add that information to your presentation, so people know where to go?
Yeah, and we share that too, especially because, let's say, if a teacher speaks with a student and they're saying, go to your counselor, they'll be able to help you quit, or they'll be able to talk you through some of these things. Well, there's a 4-week wait, so then the teacher doesn't feel like she's trained to give, any additional information. It is a good resource to say, maybe go to clinic, right? Or just being able to say, your primary care provider can help you with this. It doesn't necessarily have to be, something simple, right? Just streamline it right into, the care they are giving. And then too, we even, when we're out in the community, we provide infographics for American Heart, because they're simple, they're attainable, parents can get hands on them more easily, they have more access, to websites and things like that. So, we just kind of try to connect towards them.
I
I just know we as patrol have seen some of the THC come in through like legal states into our state.
Yeah.
And I fear that that's gonna start to be used more in our schools. From the other.
Yeah, exactly.
So the quicker we can.
I guess my question is for teachers, do you, or as administration, do you have parents though that will say, CBD oil helps my child relax because they struggle with anxiety and testing, Because there was, okay, there were vitamins that came out a couple of years ago where they're essential oils, and so, again, your skin is the largest organ, right? Even though something is safe to put on your skin, it's not safe to be ingested, as someone said earlier. And so the schools that we were primarily working in, a lot of them were rural, parents were coming in and saying, this is completely safe, my son or daughter can use it because they have test anxiety. And they were always asking if they could vape in schools, but again, the oil looks the same and all of it is the same, so when tested, the sheriff see that that's why the higher for those products to have CBD with THC, so it's not just CBD.
Yeah, because there's no FDA regulation as far as like how pure it is.
And a lot of the shops will say 0%. How would you know if you go and swap, but the test kits are way too expensive to even provide in schools anyway, so it's like hard to.
Does insurance typically cover this?
Yes. Yeah, most insurances cover it. We bill at, for tobacco treatment, we don't bill at an office visit rate. We bill at an education rate so that the patient does not have to do copay. We try to make it as easy as possible. If a patient is uninsured or underinsured, we work with care coordination, and we've done a combination of resources through like the Minnesota Quit Line and other resources to get patients the nicotine replacements that they need to support them. There really is not a best practice for e-cigarette addiction. Best practice for nicotine tobacco addiction is a combination of medication and counseling. And so basically what's being instructed from the training centers, I was actually just at the national conference, is to continue with it and treat it as a nicotine addiction piece. The other piece that requires quite a bit of education specifically to the families and the students is that most of our nicotine replacement therapies have not been tested on youth, but it's being looked at as we use other medications to treat youth that when they're dealing with an adult type problem, and use other medications off-label per se, when they're prescribed by a physician. And so depending on the case or whatever, it may or may not be utilizing of some of those nicotine replacement therapies or their quit medications. It'll based off of an individualized treatment plan in working with that provider. All of our tobacco treatment specialists are APPs, a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant. So they do have prescribing rights and also work hand in hand with a MD or a DO.
When you're taking the impact of 20 cigarettes at a time with the dose, how long does it take a 15-year-old doing it on the side to get addicted?
2 to 3 days.
That's the really spooky part. To see
Especially
how,
when they don't think it's addictive.
correct.
Yeah, when I think
It's not like it takes 5 years for that to occur.
I
So,
don't remember the article, but there was, I think an 18-year-old high school senior, this was last year, who did there was a story in, I don't remember where, but I sent that out to parents too, and that individual just talked about how fast he got addicted and how anxious he felt when he couldn't use it. I mean, his anxiety was through the roof, and it was all about hitting that vape.
Is that the story of the hockey player?
That's what I'm thinking.
I don't remember the
I'm thinking the
details
same
around
story.
it for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But
That was a really powerful story.
There was a 16-year-old student that was the ending speaker at the national conference this past August in Minneapolis, that my memory storage got full because I almost had his full presentation recorded. I was like, I'm so using this. Where he had seizures. I mean, he nicked freaked out and had seizures and ended up in inpatient treatment. And talked about his course of, not all of a sudden this was happening and his behaviors were changing. And he didn't recognize it, but everyone around him recognized it. I mean, so looking at that full struggle of addiction, and it's heart-wrenching. Very impactful.
So it sounds like there's a couple action steps. One is we need to get more information back out to parents, and I think the best way to do that is not from one mass email that's coming from each building, because parents tend to look at it when it comes from their kid's teacher. So that would be one step. Number two, Helen, you're teaching it currently in the classroom. We're also doing it between Oak Ridge and PME. Robbie and Jill, do we still do it in part of the DARE program as well?
More like grade program, talk about drugs, and I did a big thing last year on that.
It's more like current drug trends, so it's covered there. We talk about it a little bit in DARE, because we have an alcohol and tobacco lesson, and we don't see a ton of people smoking cigarettes anymore, so babies brought up and we teach that in 5th grade, and I would say 90% of kids already have seen one or know what it is.
And some of those classes don't get it until the end of May. So then, I mean, because it's on rotation, so, I mean, if they have the first class, they hear about it right away, but if they don't have it until the last class, they maybe are being talked about it until then. And I know that a lot of people want to think, just as I would like to think, that it's not happening in 5th grade, but it is. So, that's, and I agree that having 5th grade in an elementary building will hopefully help that, but, there's still buses and.
Yep.
There's
I always think
other
of, yeah.
hockey trips. I mean, I remember when we sent Maddox to his first hockey camp, he came home with a lot of new words. And I was like, wow, okay.
My mother-in-law used to teach 5th grade, and this was 2 years ago, and, I had worked in tobacco prevention, but it wasn't as heavy in vaping. And so 2 really, really good students, they would do extra projects for her, she loved them, right? Great students. They were like, Miss Pearl, can we charge our laser pointers in your computer? All year, they were doing it, and she had no idea, right? They were jewels, so, yeah, and they were vaping right in the classroom, doing things like, do their games, you get 10 points, they kind of teachers back, or you can do it without somebody catching you, or, all of those things, but, yeah, it's crazy.
What's scary too is I've talked to 2 different kids now within the last calendar year, and they say, nope, I don't smoke, that sounds horrible for you, my parents will nicotine test me, but I've sold it because I can make easy money, everybody's doing it, I go to school, I buy one and I turn around and sell it, and I make $5-10, and just that accessibility is just unbelievable right in school.
And yeah, I just had a student last week pay somebody $60 for one. That's a huge upcharge. Like, you got screwed, first of all. Second of all, it's a bad idea, but $60, I mean, he was gonna pay $60 for one.
Yep.
And so a kid walked away with $60. Policy, man.
I believe I have a outing tomorrow night, at the Regency Center with the mayor. Might just see where, I won't wear this hat, I'll wear a different hat.
With
Share some of these stories.
With Ryan.
Yes, yep.
Well, this was great. Thank you for the conversation. This is awesome. This is good stuff for us to know and to share all of the awesome things that are happening in the community. Thanks for having me.
And are they still pulling menthol cigarettes off the shelves? Because I heard they were gonna hold them.
Golden Valley has an ordinance on the table right now, and I think they will vote on the 15th of October. They'll have their second hearing and vote. They have the strongest one in the state right now, where they would get rid of or the flavorings in e-cigarettes and menthol and T21. But that's presently not the case for all of Minnesota and not around here. But there's a great new commercial that just came out, Don't Discount My Life, and it actually has African-American youth talking about how much they're inundated by the industry to use menthol cigarettes, and what a disparity that is compared to other populations. So,
Because they say it's the most that's how kids started.
Because it doesn't have that, which is why they're now involved in the
Yeah,
strawberries.
exactly.